This is the story of how India lost the chip race and how India is finally trying to build it again. Back in the 1960s, when the semiconductor revolution had just begun, India already had a chance to enter the industry. Even Intel co-founder Robert Noyce visited India to explore semiconductor manufacturing. But instead of ambition and execution, investors found endless controls, approvals, and bureaucracy. Under the Congress-era license Raj, starting factories meant navigating layers of permissions and government clearances. Manufacturing moved slower than government files. For decades, Congress-era policy treated manufacturing as paperwork instead of national strategy. And while the world accelerated into the semiconductor revolution, India remained trapped inside files. The tragedy was not that India lacked talent. The tragedy was that governments lacked vision. And yet, Indian scientists still showed extraordinary capability. By the 1980s, Semiconductor Complex Limited in Mohali had become one of India's biggest technology ambitions. In fact, India began semiconductor manufacturing before TSMC was even founded. It proved India had the capability to compete globally. But after a devastating fire damaged the facility, Congress governments failed to rebuild momentum with urgency. That was the real tragedy. At the exact moment the world entered the computer revolution, India lost critical years. And in semiconductors, losing years means losing generations. As semiconductor manufacturing exploded globally through the 1990s and 2000s, India remained dependent on imports. India produced world-class engineers for the global semiconductor industry, but failed to build the factories those engineers needed at home. The world's chip revolution moved at the speed of innovation. India's system moved at the speed of file approvals. For decades, governments discussed technology, but execution never arrived. Now, that story is changing. India has launched one of the biggest semiconductor pushes in its history. Massive incentives are now being used to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to India. Tata Electronics is building a semiconductor fab in Dholera with an investment of over 91,000 crore. The facility is expected to support up to 50,000 wafers per month. Micron is setting up semiconductor assembly and testing operations in Gujarat. And ASML, the company behind the world's most advanced chip-making machines, is now partnering with Tata Electronics. For the first time in decades, the world is beginning to take India seriously in semiconductor manufacturing. Because semiconductors are not just about electronics anymore. They are about economic power, national security, artificial intelligence, and technological independence. For decades, India lost time because of bureaucracy, indecision, and outdated economic thinking. Today, India is finally building the ecosystem it should have built generations ago. The semiconductor race rewards countries that move fast, think long-term, and execute at scale. India missed the first semiconductor revolution. But this time, India intends to build its own future